Fire 'em up. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Andrew Gosser Show on 1039 WYAB. Blowing out the signal at our 50,000 watt blowtorch of a transmitter. Loving it. We're also streaming on Rumble. We're also streaming on X. We're also streaming on YouTube. And we're streaming at the mothership that is WYAB.com. So if for whatever reason you can't pick up the signal, hey, go ahead and hit us up on the stream. We'd appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe. That would be awesome. Get the word out there as we continue to change the way that people look about politics here locally in Mississippi. If you wouldn't mind, give me a follow on X. I'm creeping up towards that next target. Andrew Gosser, AndrewGasser. And the number today, if you want to be on the program, is 601 879 0002. And the text line is open. I got some good ones, actually. Got to try to get to those today. 601 879 5060. Today is a Founding Fathers Friday in the second hour, 11 o'clock hour here in local Mississippi. You're listening somewhere outside on the stream. That's the second hour. We got a wingding doodler of a founding father. I really like him. He's a mutt. And the mission here at the Andrew Gosser Show is standard. We are here to equip the saints. Who are the saints? Y'all are the saints. And, you know, I've got a lot on my mind as I'm sitting here preparing for the show today, but sometimes you just got to go gently. You can't sit there and club the baby seal over the head. Sometimes you got to be gentle. And so a gentle word turns away wrath, but a harsh word incites anger. And I would never club a baby seal, but I would club a politician. And the story that I'm going to lead with was not what I had planned. But again, sometimes these stories pop up and they get recommended to me. This one's coming from a friend in Madison, Mississippi. And this is coming from WLBT. Give them credit for this one. Residents of Northwest Madison County gathered Thursday night to raise concerns about unexplained power outages affecting the rural area, with large crowds enough to spill outside of the meeting venue. Well, at least they didn't cancel the meeting because they didn't have a big enough venue. I've seen politicians do that before. Officials from Energy Mississippi and Public Service Commission, DeKeither Stamps. DeKeither Stamps is the new public service commissioner in our area. He was my state rep. I know him. He's actually approachable, which is something that you can't say a lot about some of our public officials. And customers up there are all of a sudden getting these power outages that are much more frequent than normal. And they're upset about it. And they have every right to be upset about it. They're ticked off. You've got customers losing food. You've got people on oxygen. That's a problem out here in the country, one resident said. 4 days without electricity. Did anybody hear about that at WYB? I don't know if Chip talked about it. But 4 days without power? Even in the ice storm, and I've got a story about that, $107 million worth of damage in Mississippi. Statewide, $107 million worth of damage in insurance claims right now. And I heard about the power outages in northeastern Mississippi. I heard about power outages and the devastation and damage in Oxford, Tupelo, but I did not hear about it down here. So this is where it gets kind of suspicious to me. And whenever I hear a politician downplaying something, I want to take them at their word, but I want to trust but verify. There have been many times in my political life where, oh, the snow plowing's not getting done, and you can literally have the picture of not even a picture, man. Like we would have video outside some of our complainers. I had great residents who would sit there and say, "Yep, this person's going to complain. They're not out here plowing," and literally 5 minutes before they even have their complaint up, we got video of it. And so I sometimes I'm very aware of the community activism that gets fired up over this, but sometimes it's like my lying eyes. I went without power for 4 days. I can't make that up. This isn't AI, this isn't some simulation. 4 days without electricity, my bill should not be going up $200 or $100, another resident said. At the end of the day, our bills should not be going up, and they're right. And these data centers, while it's good for jobs and it's good for construction work and all of that, it 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 is gonna have an impact on our water, and it's gonna have an impact on our electricity. So what do the politicians say? Stamps said that outage frequency is declining and attributed the problems to a combination of factors. Quote, "Those outages are going down. They are working through these issues at the utility companies, and it's mixture of things. Right now, right-of-way clearing on the county side and the vegetation removal," Stamp said. So, me being a highway commissioner and being responsible for trees and vegetation removal, I can tell you that in my experience managing crews and doing this, we n there might have been one time, true sto this is so crazy. One time, we had a power outage because we were cutting trees, and the truth of the matter is, the guy who was cutting trees, very competent and very knowledgeable, was doing everything he needed to do and got stung. Well, he didn't even get stung, he got swarmed by a bunch of wasps, and tree went the wrong way, got the wire well, not the tree, but the limb went the wrong way, got the wire. We had to call out the power company out there, Communist Edison, and to get the wire fixed. But these people are so competent who are cutting down trees along the highways and around power wires. You're not gonna have a 4-day outage. That just doesn't make sense to me. And if someone who is a tree cutter out there wants to sit there and come on and disagree with me, that's fine, but I'm telling you the example and the excuse being given does not make the muster. It doesn't make the grade. They're UA. Energy Entergy of Mississippi officials said the root causes of the outages include overhanging tree limbs, equipment failure, lighting, and scheduled interruptions. Who in the service community, and I know that there's a lot of service listeners out there, you run businesses, and it's important that you have great customer service to continue to grow your clientele, to continue to grow your business. Who schedules a 4-day outage? Who does that? Now, I would say if you have to pick the big 3 utilities, internet, electricity, and water, everybody's ditching electricity because they can go into their car and they can charge up their phone and they can get their internet. I would say water would be the next most important thing, followed by electricity. Unless you need electricity to for your oxygen machine or something like that for a medical emergency, but, everybody goes without electricity for a little bit, you're gonna be okay. 4 days, man, that's gonna be a problem. Even my deep freezers, I'd be kind of a little nervous, not necessarily in the fall, spring, or winter, but in the summertime, 4 days at Mississippi heat, don't know about that, don't know about that. And what I wanna know, and maybe I'll shoot him an email and ask him because DeKeither Stamps, smart guy, whether you agree with his politics or not. I wonder what the service commissioners are talking about as far as energy needs. I have yet to hear any real solutions in Mississippi about how we're gonna go ahead and power up all of these data centers. And like one of my state rep friends said, "Andy, we hear you out there. We've seen Valor Nucleonics, but people just don't seem to believe it. Never mind, they're firing up their first plant here in about 2 months. No, 3 months. 3 months." And I'm telling you, if we don't go down that road, you think your energy bill is gonna be high now, just wait. There is no way to supply all of that energy with the current infrastructure, and I haven't seen a plan yet to do that, how to build out Mississippi in a way that makes it to where they can fully power all of these data centers. I just haven't. I've heard about the jobs, and I'm for it, by the way. I want those construction jobs. Chip Matthews has a very different opinion saying, once those data centers become obsolete, the state ends up owning the buildings. I find that interesting, and data centers could actually move beyond Earth orbit, infinite energy up there, not tackling the grid. But I'm worried about Mississippi. I'm not even worried about Louisiana, Illinois, Minnesota, New York, California. The heck with that. What about us? And I truly wish that we had more elected representatives who were sitting there and taking this seriously, because sitting there and taking care of our people is the number one job of our elected officials, to take care of Americans, not illegal immigrants, not refugees, Americans. And we've got a lot of problems right now just taking care of us. Whether you want to look at the VA getting new restrooms in a 21st century OBGYN clinic, I think that's critical. A lot of vets are women out there. They need services too. They need healthcare too. $5 billion being spent on VA hospitals around the country. Minnesota had 17 billion in fraud, just that we know about. And again, this is all just local distractions. And if you listen to Clay Edwards this morning, you did hear him kind of voice an opinion about winning and all the winning that Trump is doing, and we need to celebrate those wins. And part of celebrating that win would be expanding our nuclear energy supply here in Mississippi. We don't need the enormous cooling towers like we currently have on our old 1960s and 70s technology. We don't need these mass sites cleared out for the generation of nuclear power. You don't. But what you do need are elected officials and community leaders to get together and come together and say, we're not going to fall for the propaganda that's been put out by the Nuclear Atomic Agency. We're not going to fall for the propaganda that's been put into our schools ever since the 70s, reinforced in the 80s with Chernobyl, in the 90s with the Captain Planet, in the early 2000s with the different peace global green energy deals that they're trying to push on us, the Paris Peace Accords. It's all a bunch of hot garbage. But when you've had it beaten into your head for long enough, all of a sudden you're not thinking clearly. And this is right here in Madison County, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't like some far off place. And I know I'm a little bit more national than most, but this isn't some far off state or even some far off country. This is Madison County, Mississippi. And depending on whose numbers you want to believe, this new nuclear technology, should we choose to embrace it, much like we're trying to embrace AI, would be an enormous help. It would critically change how not only do we power these data facilities, but our residences too. And there are a lot of really good ideas out there, which we've talked about some on the show, but maybe we could talk about them more. But we are off and running on the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. We're going to take our first commercial break. We will be right back. Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show on 1039 WYAB. We will not let you down. And, sometimes when you're doing a really good job, that's when your opponents, your critics, your trolls start screaming the most. So whenever I see the trolls screaming, the critics complaining, the whiners out there, the Karens, well then you know you're probably doing something right. And when I'm sitting there looking at what MAGA is actually doing, and we know that there are people out there who saying MAGA is dead. MAGA is not dead. It's not dead in Mississippi. It's certainly not dead in Texas, but it's definitely being confronted and slowed down. And I've got two examples of this. The first one is top Senate Republican warns Democrats could flip Texas seat if Ken Paxton is the GOP nominee. Who do they want? John Cornyn. John Cornyn's been there a long, long time. And he is one of these senators who fits the profile that should be voting much more conservatively than it is. And I know that some of us have heard this before, but some of us haven't. Some people tune into the whole show. Some people listen to the podcast. Some people, but for those of you who don't know, there are different flavors of Republicans out there. For instance, you've got someone like a Susan Collins who is always dragging her feet in not really supporting the line like we would want a Republican to do. Well, look at her district and how it's Democrat plus 2, and yet as a Republican, she wins. There's grace there, and I'm all for it. But then I look at somebody like John Cornyn, who sits there and he'll say, "Oh, I vote with Trump 99% of the time on the bill when it gets to the floor." But what it doesn't show you is all the amendments and all the no votes in committees, all of those votes. You find out that it's a very different story. And for the president of the Senate, the leader of the Senate, actually not the president, the leader of the Senate, John Thune, to come out and say something as reckless as if top Senate Republican warns that Democrats could flip Texas if Ken Paxton wins. Ken Paxton is the guy that the attorney general. Man, wouldn't you like to have an attorney general in Mississippi like Ken Paxton? Have to keep the powder dry. Have to keep the powder dry. I keep reminding myself I got to keep the powder dry. But it sure would be nice to have an attorney general out there who dropped bombs. And Ken Paxton is the one who held all the Texas Democrats in contempt for trying to shut down the bills that they were trying to pass. Remember that back in the last summer? And where did they flee to? Illinois, of course. But that's just one story. And this is coming from Mediaite. Senate Majority Leader John Thune warned that Republicans could risk losing the Senate seat if Texas party nominates Attorney General Ken Paxton as the nominee. Thune has endorsed incumbent Senator, of course he has, John Cornyn, who has held the seat since 2002. When we go back to the State of the Union, what were the two biggest things that got cheers? One was the SAVE Act. It was simple, really easy, and I've got a great video on the SAVE Act. I'm gonna play that here in a minute. And the other thing that got a really big cheer was term limits for congressmen and senators. We need them both. And I'm sorry, but a senator who has been there since 2002 needs to go. Now, this is a 1 minute and 39-second clip with a candidate for Senate in Texas, Wesley Hunt, being interviewed by Stephen A. Smith. I wanna make sure I get all the credit out there, don't wanna get hit with the copyright, but this is really good. And it's important that we hear this, on why we need new blood in the Senate.
How do you, as a conservative who happens to be black, answer such cynicism coming from the other side when they say things like that?
Well, it's very simple, brother. We live in an era to where there are no more slaves and there are no more slave owners. You see, I live in an era of today. My great great grandfather was born on a plantation. His name was Silas Crawford. He was born on Rosedown Plantation, about 30 miles north of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Three of his great great grandchildren went to West Point. Three of his great great grandchildren served in the military. At one point, my brother, sister, and I were all deployed in Baghdad at the same time for 2 months. We had a praying mother and a praying community. One of his great great grandchildren, me, is running for the United States Senate and is surging in the polls against, last I checked, two white guys, because nobody really cares about what I look like. They care about my service to this nation and who I am as a human being. And let me tell you something, brother, I've done all of this as a conservative.
Man, wouldn't that be awesome if we had something like that in Mississippi? Not complaining about the 2 ladies running for Senate right now. I'm just saying that is the type of articulation, command of the English language that we need from our politicians. This guy's a West Point grad, a helo pilot. I think he was Apache guy, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, this is your typical conservative that's out there that the left doesn't want you to see, that the news media doesn't want you to see, Operation Mockingbird doesn't want you to see. I wanna hear this out, because there are some people listening to this story that their heads are blowing up right now, and it's my job to help make sure that it happens.
The most racist thing that I've kind of seen over the course of the past few years is this, though. It is the insinuation that black people are too stupid to get an ID to vote. You have to have an ID for everything. And Republicans aren't looking at black people or white people or Asian people or Hispanic people. Not at all. They are saying if you're an American and you are competent, you can figure out how to have a cell phone and an apartment and buy groceries and buy liquor and get on airplanes and buy anything else. I don't care what you look like. You could be on United, you could be on Spirit, you could be on American. At the end of the day, everybody has to have an ID. That has nothing to do with race. You see, that is the Republican Party that I am currently coming up in right now
Mhm.
in this phase. This ain't about the color of your skin. It's about, are you an American and do you bleed red or not?
And that is the type of dude that we need in Washington, DC, who is not afraid to take on the race issue, who accurately frames the whole problem. And we've been saying that here on this show. If there's anybody in the sound of my voice who needs to get an ID to go vote, hit me up. Let me check real quick. Yep, I'm sitting here looking right now, got my weekly American Space Defense thing that I try to attend. Yep, nope, no one's needing a ID to vote in Mississippi. Why? Because we take care of that. What this is about is illegal immigration and taking our country back and trying to save it. We can have people like Mr. Hunt, Wesley Hunt, representing us in Washington, D.C., or you can have people like Miss Elian Omar representing us in D.C. Pick one. Pick one. You have one that has a praying mom and a praying grandmother and a praying father, or you can have a practicing Muslim. And I I do I do appreciate the contrast between the different religions because they all have an impact on America, but I'm not quite ready to go step off that plank and start having something like that every week where we talk about that. But it has been brought up, and I have thought about it. I think Founding Father Fridays and Techniques, Tactics, and Procedures, TTP Tuesdays, is gonna be really good, and I'm just telling you now, it's Friday. You've got 4 days to figure this out. You're gonna wanna have a laptop ready to go with your favorite AI agent plugged in, and we're gonna go do some stuff, and we're gonna find out together. It's gonna be fun. And you're gonna be able to apply these principles to your local races, to your local places, and you're gonna be able to find out where the money's coming from, what's really happening, and we're kinda using a different model. I don't wanna get too far into it, but there's really good stuff that's coming. You are listening to The Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back.
But when it comes to the corruption that is plundering, it's plundering America. There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion from the American taxpayer. Oh, we have all the information. And in actuality, the number is much higher than that. And California, Massachusetts, Maine, and many other states are even worse. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially
Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show on 1039 WYAB. We are moving and grooving on a Founding Fathers Friday. And something came across, Dogfish always chiming in, says John Cornyn is not MAGA. Very true. Very true. But Texas has fallen into a trap that is played by the Uniparty and the deep state. They run someone with a really good name, but instead of a two-way race, they make it a three-way race. And I don't know if Texas has the 50+1 rule or not. I don't live in Texas, so guess what? I don't really care about that too much. But what we do have are 3 people running for U.S. Senate in Texas, and it's gonna be contested because John Paxton is an awesome dude, Wesley Hunt is an awesome dude, and John Cornyn is the sitting U.S. Senator. And this just happens all the time. Now, I don't know if that's really happening in Mississippi this year in any of the races. I haven't really paid attention. Actually, it has, ladies and gentlemen. It has. Colonel Thompson. Benny Thompson is doing it in the 2nd Congressional District in Mississippi. There's 3 people running for office there in the Democrat primary. Benny's gonna go to a runoff against whoever. He's gonna crush it. You don't need to be a political rocket scientist to figure that out. And I'll tell you what, the Sweet Bee and I have watched a lot of those commercials that one of the gentlemen is running, and, the imagery of it is really telling because, on one hand, it's true, but it's almost like it's a synthetic AI commercial in that he's sitting there just slowly shaking his head, looking at these rundown houses in Jackson and blaming Benny for it and not giving any of the credit to Mayor Lumumia, or however you say his name, not trying to be disrespectful. Everybody knows, full disclosure, me pronouncing names that are a little bit difficult, just not gonna happen. These are the type of patterns that I love bringing out and exposing on this show because this is one of the faster growing shows. It's not what you're hearing on every other conservative talk show host. We're talking about things that are important to Mississippi, but definitely not the same tact that we're going at it. And so hats off to the Republicans for this time anyway, for making sure that we do have good primaries. And we're not sitting here discouraging anybody from running for office. I don't wanna be telling people that, although people have accused me of saying that. What I'm saying is if you're really gonna run for US Senate, I mean, Cindy Hyde-Smith, I think, has got $5 million with all of her different funds and PACs and whatnot. And whether you like Miss Cindy or not, she has been on that line. And I don't know enough about Miss Sarah, but she's putting in a challenge. And Republicans are gonna have a choice there. Get out and vote March 10th. We're still looking for, all the news outlets are talking about getting ready for the primary coming up on March 10th. Poll workers are gonna be what makes it happen. You know, that might be something too, where we maybe get it to where we get these high school students a day off of school to go ahead and get in there and work the polls. I mean, I think it pays $225. And these 17-year-old kids who can vote in the fall, in November, I mean, that's a good way to get them involved in the process to see how the sausage is made, how the votes are counted, how the machines, quote unquote, work. The importance of a zero tape. Making sure when you turn on the machine in the morning. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. You gotta make sure that there's no votes in the machine when you get there in the morning, you inspect it. You run the zero tape, make sure that the computer has no votes for anybody. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. And these elections just don't do themselves. I am grateful and thankful to those who will get out and vote, whether that be in person early voting or on election day. I myself, I always had to vote absentee in the military, and I always like showing up on election day, but I might have to vote a little bit early this year. We'll see what happens. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say. And then about these elections in Texas and how it applies here in Mississippi. But with that being said, has anybody seen the baby Trump commercials and videos that have been going around using AI? I just got sent one during the break. My goodness, I just retweeted it. It is so good. And I'm not gonna play it because it uses actually Trump's speech, and it's a good speech on actually, you know what? It segues perfectly into illegal immigration. Let's do it.
But when it comes to the corruption that is plundering, it's plundering America. There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion from the American taxpayer. Oh, we have all the information. And in actuality, the number is much higher than that. And California, Massachusetts, Maine, and many other states are even worse. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance.
And we do need to have that war on fraud. For those of you who haven't heard, They've already stopped the $250 million or 200 and is it 250 million or 250 it's gotta be $250 million Medicare payment to Minnesota to make Minnesota validate all that, and they should, but we also have to back our ICE officers and our immigration efforts, because what happened in Minnesota was disgusting. When you've got Giraffe Thong Man running around the United States, sitting there doing crazy stuff, playing a harmonica, singing lunacy. When you've got Happy Fur Friday trending on X and people happily running around in their fur costumes. It's ridiculous. This used to be saved for Halloween. Now you've got grown ooh, I almost cussed. You almost got grown adults running around thinking that they're foxes or giraffes or frogs. It's ridiculous and disgusting. And we need to have a common sense approach to what's going on there. But getting back to immigration and ICE, something very rare happened because while we have states like Mississippi that are embracing ICE and we welcome ICE and we want ICE here doing ICE things, and we're not going to act the fool and get in your way. In Maryland, the governor just came out and said they're not supporting ICE. Well, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen.
This is nothing more than politics over public safety. And we as elected sheriffs are fed up with it. You don't see this many sheriffs in one location in the state at any given time. But we have to come together in unison to stop the ridiculousness that's going on up here in Annapolis, Maryland. And lawmakers need to wake up and realize Marylanders and the American people want public safety over politics, and they're not getting it.
Chet says they couldn't hear it. I turned this up much as I can. Long story short is the sheriff is the most high-ranking law enforcement officer in the county. And it's rare to have more than 2 or 3 of them get together other than at the annual sheriff's meeting where they all get together and talk about law enforcement and things that they're gonna do. In Maryland, they had a massive congregation of Maryland sheriffs come together and say that they're working with ICE. They're not listening to the governor. And this is where, they call it 5th generation warfare, political warfare. This is where it's actually gonna end up in the counties. Are you a blue county or are you a red county? It's not even a state or a city unless you're like a mega metropolis like Chicago or New York or Jackson. Jackson makes Hines County go a certain way. But even law enforcement is starting to stand up against this stuff now. It's just gone too far. And if we do not get a hold of this locally, you'll see it continue to spread. But make no mistake about it, it's all part of the plan. When we get back, we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get ready for Founding Father Friday at the top of the next hour. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back. Oh, yeah. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. You know, what was the greatest land purchase in the state in the history of the United States? Was it Alaska or was it Louisiana Purchase? I would argue it was the Louisiana Purchase. And the price tag back then was $15 million. Let's talk about Minnesota autism program fraud. In 2017, the autism program repayments, 1.1 million. 2018, 6.15 million. 2019, 20.4 million. 2020, 38.1 million. 2021, 83 million. 2022, 124.5 million. 2023, 189.43 million. 2024, 343 million 100,000. Okay, and everybody, I hear what you're saying. Andy, that was back when the purchase. What's the purchase price today? $340 million. We've got more fraud coming out of autism in Minnesota than we have for the entire Louisiana purchase in 2024 dollars. We don't know 2025 yet because Minnesota's corrupt. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. The amount of fraud. What could we do inside America, taking care of our veterans, taking care of our power and grid structure, hardening the electrical structure? Northern Madison County, Mississippi, going without power for 4 days. Northeastern Mississippi going without power for weeks. You could do a lot of tree and brush maintenance for a fraction of that. You could probably clean up all of the major power grid, less than 20 million in Minnesota dollars. You could just have everybody out there just get all the crews out there, make it a whole week-long event. I mean, that was something that we did back in Illinois, community cleanup day, because we would go out there when a deer got hit and we had to pick that up, or trash got blown over. People were always trying to pick it up, but there were some places where we had to do it. But once a day, adopt a highway, community cleanup event. Why don't we do that here in Mississippi with these trees and brush pickup? I do have to say, Hinds County, 2 or 3 times a year comes through and takes care of the overgrowth in places where they're responsible for it, and we're grateful for that. In the next hour, it's going to be awesome. We are going to be talking about our founding fathers, and it's kind of growing. A lot of people were asking who it was going to be. It's not going to be one of the major ones that everybody knows. That's too easy. We want to expand your mind here at the Andrew Gosser Show. We want it to be the point where you go ahead and get enough information on this person just to go out there and do your own research and maybe talk to your kids about it, or your grandkids, or your great-grandkids. That's the whole goal of this show. It isn't about the host. It's about growing the American dream right here in Mississippi, because Mississippi's the best place to live. Continue to tell you that. A lot of you don't believe it, but let me tell you, you do not want to go to Canada. We already heard from the person over there. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
But when it comes to the corruption that is plunging, it's plundering America. There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion from the American taxpayer. Oh, we have all the information. And in actuality, the number is much higher than that. And California, Massachusetts, Maine, and many other states are even worse. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President, J.D. Vance. We'll get it done. And if we're able to find enough of that fraud, we will actually have a balanced budget overnight. It'll go very quickly. That's the kind of money you're talking about. We'll balance our budget. The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness are the norm, not the exception. Importing these cultures through unrestricted immigration and open borders brings those problems right here to the USA. And it is the American people who pay the price in higher medical bills, car insurance rates, rent, taxes, and perhaps most importantly, crime. We will take care of this problem. We're going to take care of this problem. We are not
Yes, yes, you are tuned into the Andrew Gosser Show on 1039 WYAB. It is a Founding Fathers Friday, and we are about to get into it. Before we do, though, we are streaming on Rumble. We are streaming on X. We are streaming on YouTube, and we are streaming at the mothership, WYAB.com. So if you can't pick up the 50,000 watt blowtorch that is our radio signal, WYAB, well, then like the stream, share the stream, give me a follow on X at Andrew Gosser. I sure would appreciate it. And our mission here at the Andrew Gosser Show is standard. We are here to equip the saints. Who are the saints? Y'all are the saints. You just don't know it quite yet. Well, some of you know, some of you don't. But what everybody wants to know is who is this week's founding father on this Founding Fathers Friday on the Andrew Gosser Show. You know him. You love him. George Clymer from Pennsylvania. Yep, he's our guy. And when I was doing research on this guy, I learned a lot about him in that as I go through in not just with George Clymer, but with other founding fathers, their upbringings. You know, some people are saying, "Oh, they were just rich." They were rich at the time, but their upbringings were rough as heck. Most kids have it 1,000 times better than some of these founding fathers did. And this poor guy, we're gonna find out, he's all over the place. But the thing that makes George Clymer very different from all the other founding fathers that we've talked about so far, is that he is only one of 6 men who had the distinct honor and the distinct privilege of signing both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. He's a double signer, ladies and gentlemen. There's only 6 of them out there. That's pretty special, in my opinion. George Clymer, double signer. Born on March 16th, 1739 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Clymer had a tough start in life. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what I think gave America such grit, is all the early obstacles in life, all the hardships in life that they had to go. He was orphaned. His father was lost at sea. He was a sea captain, and his mother passed away early on in his life. He was raised by an uncle who brought him into the family into the mercantile business. So again, America, man, we are a bunch of free market capitalists. We're always wheeling and dealing, trading, hustling, looking for that next job, looking for that next dollar. They are out there. And this guy is no different. George Clymer had no formal schooling. You know, we talked about some of our founding fathers who went overseas to London to get all trained up, went to religious schools. Not this guy. Nope. School of hard knocks and learned on the streets. But he was an avid self-educator through reading. And we've talked about how important it is to have our kids reading, not just our anxiety devices, but actual books. You know, I can remember my grandfather making me read a book on poisonous snakes back in the early or the late 1970s. I was only in like first grade. He's like, "You need to read this book on snakes." I'm like, "What?" But I'll tell you what, if I didn't find that valuable just a couple years ago when I bought the farm in Mississippi, very, very important. By adulthood, he became a successful Philadelphia merchantman and businessman. And just like so many people who are in business, I can think of several state reps right now who own businesses. They get drawn into politics because they want to make it better for their family and for their business. Not in a way that personally enriches them, but to make it a more open system. Clymer jumped into the patriot cause early, motivated partially by British trade restrictions during his business. Imagine that. Government starts messing with his business, he's going to get involved with it. Isn't that the American way? Telling him where to go, what to do, and how to do it. I love that with this dude. He was one of the earliest voices pushing for full independence from Britain. He served in the Continental Congress from 1776 to 1777 and from 1780 to 1782, focusing on committees dealing with commerce, finance, and military affairs. Quiet and debates, but effective behind the scenes. And these are the guys that sometimes are called the backbenchers. This guy, from everything that I could read, and again, I went to the YouTube, Google, foundingfathers.org, I think it is, foundingfathers.gov, maybe. Everywhere that I go to, the one thing that really stood out about George Clymer is that he was a quiet debater. He wasn't really loud or ostentatious, but as we're going to see, he had some ideas that would prove critical to the United States moving far into the future, long after he was gone. He signed the Declaration on August 2nd, 1776, after Pennsylvania got on board. And again, there's a whole issue about Pennsylvania wanting to come on board. During the Revolution, British troops even targeted his home. His family had to hide in the woods while soldiers wrecked the place. And that's not uncommon. We had the guy in Virginia, and forgive me, I've already forgot his name. I should remember it, but I don't. Just being truthful with you folks. He targeted his own house. This was a tactic used by the British. At the 1787 Constitution Convention, Clymer attended nearly every session, spoke sparingly but thoughtfully, and supported the final document. And this is where, again, he gets really involved with this. He tried, unsuccessfully, to push for the regulating of safe importation. Basically, he was trying to stop it. He lost, but he started planting those seeds. And sometimes that's how these things end up working. It's just like the banning of Sharia law. It starts in the beginning with just one or two, and this time we had 5. We need to make sure that we start working on that as soon as the session ends. As soon as the session ends. He is described as an abolitionist, though he briefly inherited a slave as a child. So everybody always asks, was the founding father a slave owner? Well, he inherited one as a child and then fought for abolition. So you tell me where he stands on that issue. Our public school system is so wretched. Later, he served in Pennsylvania's legislature, a U.S. representative in the first Congress from 1789 to 1791, and basically, again, helped handle the revenue issues, specifically the Whiskey Rebellion. And then it goes back into his family life. And I don't know why I cut and pasted this like I did. I write it up and then I edit it and try to make it better. This is crazy. He married Elizabeth Meredith in 1765, well before the Constitution and the Declaration were done. They had 10 children, dude. You want to talk about busy. Poor Elizabeth, 10 kids. I just can't imagine that. After his political life, Clymer retired to a quieter life in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, where he passed away on January 23rd, 1813, at the age of 73. Again, the main thing about this guy is that he's a low-key kind of talker. Wasn't necessarily out there getting the headlines like some of our other founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, Thomas Paine, others. People out there writing the Federalist Papers, having this debate. But the thing that makes me really interested in this is that he was a merchant, he was a double signer, and a contributor to our nation's founding. Now, I know, and that's just basically what he did. But what I left out of this was his spiritual upbringing, because that to me is the real purpose of why I'm doing Founding Fathers Friday. Because if you don't go look for their spiritual upbringing, you're not going to find it. They're trying to wipe it all away from the history books. And I don't want that to happen. George Clymer's religious faith isn't well documented with absolute certainty, but there are some personal writings that he left behind, and historical accounts points to a affiliation with the Episcopal Church, the American branch of Anglicanism, with strong family ties to Quakerism that he did not fully adopt. And so to me, how many of us were raised one way, we'll say Lutheran, Then you had another side of the family that was Catholic. Then you got the Protestants, and then you've got the evangelicals. We're just a nation of mutts, both nationally, DNA-wise, and spiritually. But there was one common theme, and that theme was Christ. This is the background on his family. His mother, Deborah, was raised a Quaker, but was disowned by the Society of Friends for marrying outside the faith. So how many of us have said we found somebody and all of a sudden mom and dad aren't happy of your life's choice, but you two hit it off and you're going to church just fine? Happens all the time. I already talked about how Clymer was orphaned very young, but this is what happened. His uncle, William Coleman, was a Quaker background, but William himself was eventually ostracized by the Quakers for supporting military defenses against the French and Spanish threats, contrary to the Quaker pacifism. The Society of Friends, remember, they were all about being a pacifist. He went back more to his Anglican roots. Some biological summaries describe his religious affiliations as Quakers. Some say he's Episcopalian, reflecting on the mixed family heritage, just like so many of us today in 2026. Main thing is that it was there. But sources leaning towards his father Anglican roots and his non-Quaker marriage often point to Episcopalian more than is an accurate fit. So that's the one thing that I wanted to say. The other thing is that from his personal notes, his faith in Christ was very critical to everything that he did. And life and death are in the tip of the tongue. And it just seemed to me that he was definitely following that piece of advice. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Founding Father Friday for George Clymer. And I encourage all of you to get online, find your own sources, and do your own work. Spend 10 minutes. Spend 10 minutes reading. Spend 5 minutes watching a couple different YouTube videos from different sources that you deem to be credible and reputable. And get smart, and then teach your kids. Teach your kids so that, because the schools are not gonna do it. The schools might talk about George Clymer for 15 seconds saying, "Yep, he was one who signed the Declaration and the Constitution." It's time for us as parents and as grandparents to take responsibility for the education of our kids, because if you look at what's coming out of our public education system, nothing against the teachers, just the crap that's being pushed out by the NEA and Department of Education. It's not good, ladies and gentlemen. Our founding fathers would want it this way. Look at George Clymer. He didn't even have a formal education. He all did it himself. That's inspiring to me. That gives me hope for our future. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on a Founding Fathers Friday. We will be right back. Yeah, you are tuned into the Andrew Gosser Show on 1039 WYAB. Got this story coming in from the Magnolia Tribune. Absentee voting winding down ahead of the March 10th Mississippi midterm primary election. Do you hear that, Republicans? Do you hear that, Democrats? Do you hear that, Independents? Libertarians, you probably won't be going because you're going to be angry anyway. But if you want to go vote, you can early. And this is coming from, like I said, the Magnolia Tribune. I haven't quoted Frank Corder in a while, but he's a good writer. We appreciate Frank. Circuit clerk offices around Mississippi will be open Saturday, February 28th from 8 a.m. until noon for in-person absentee voting ahead of the 2026 midterm. So you got today and tomorrow. If you don't want to, if you're not going to be able to vote on March 10th, you want to get it done today or tomorrow. Not a lot of time, ladies and gentlemen. Republican and Democrat voters will choose their party's nominee in the March 10th primary election, with the winners advancing to the November 3rd general election. Voters needing to cast an absentee ballot will have until Saturday, March 7th to do so. And we need to just get rid of absentee balloting altogether. That's just a fraud. That's just open fraud. In-person absentee balloting, early voting, because you're on a trip. Perhaps you're working a poll. Although if you're working your own poll, you can vote at your own spot. To cast an absentee ballot, voters must have one of the following qualified excuses to do so. Number one, be a bona fide student, teacher, or administrator at any college, university, junior college, high school, junior high, elementary, or whose studies employment necessitates her being in absence on election day. Well, I think it's in the middle of spring break in most schools, if I'm not mistaken. Be required to be out of town on election day due to employment. Be out of town on election day for any reason. Have a temporary permanent physical disability who, because of such a disability, would be unable to vote in person without substantial hardship. Be the parent or spouse of a person with a temporary or permanent disability. Be 65 years or older. Member. Wow, this is a crazy reason to be able to do this. Be a member or a spouse of the Mississippi congressional delegation absent from Mississippi on election day. So basically, they go through all the reasons that you would need. And basically, there's the catch-all in there for any reason. Out of town on any reason. Work, vacation, whatever. And then Frank just goes through all the different races. And there are a lot of them. Well, the big congressional races anyway. And like we talked about in the first hour, the Democrats put up two people against Benny Thompson, so Benny Thompson should win. Kind of shocked that's the Democrat candidates. In the Republican side, I don't see any more than two candidates. Although the news said that Michael Guest had a primary, and Frank's saying that he doesn't. Trent Kelly doesn't appear to have an opponent. Mike Easel appears to have one. It's amazing to me to see the candidates on the national scale. Where I'm more considered about is down lower, closer to me. My county supervisor, my election commissioner. But that's what's going on. So good job to Frank for that. And then another story that's coming from the Magnolia Tribune, but it's via the Associated Press. And you might have heard about it. The Boy Scouts are coming back. Now, why is Scouting America one thing, but the Girl Scouts are still the Girl Scouts? Can someone riddle me that? And why do they have cookie sales, but not the other Scouts have cookie sales? Can't guys bake? I'll tell you what, there's a young man who bakes cakes out there in Brandon, and I can't remember his name, but oh my gosh, he's done a couple of wedding cakes for friends that I know. Incredible. He's a dude. He's still in high school. He's at Northwest Rankin right now. Probably a classmate of Blake. Brother Blake will be coming on the radio too over the spring break. We got him lined up for at least one day. I'm going to keep those that information kind of dry, but I'm looking forward to having Blake in the studio. Gives us hope for the future. It's exactly what Charlie would want. But Scouting America will alter its policies to maintain support from the Department of War, Pentagon says. They don't, Pentagon or AP is so fake. They have these two pictures of this picture of Trump kind of giving that silly grin that he gives, and Pete Hegseth just scowling. And do they use a happy picture? Do they even put a picture of the Boy Scouts? Nope. They're manipulating the story any way they can, even when it's good news. They're getting rid of the DEI. That just makes common sense. School population health, DEI bad. Common sense good. Scouting America will no longer allow boys and girls to use the same bathrooms, share the same showers, and share tents. Now, let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. What are two 15-year-olds going to do in a tent together if one just happens to be a boy and one happens to be a girl? You know, I didn't fall off the truck the other day. The things that they're trying to do are absolutely despicable. What DEI has done, what the left has done to hypersexualize everything. Can't let kids be kids anymore. I'm telling you, I am so glad that I have the relationship that I have with my kids, and we get to talk about different stuff. Literally, if there's anything serious that's going down in their lives, I'm the first one they call. And Dad, I need to talk about this. All right, let's talk about it, son. Let's talk about it, daughter. And the stuff that they insidiously plant into all of our cartoons, all of our kids shows, our scouting programs, our mentoring programs. Pete Hegseth said it best. They're bringing back the Boy Scout motto, on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to guide my country and to obey the Boy Scout law. And that's where he stopped the quote. And I should know the rest of it because I was a Boy Scout. Didn't make Eagle, but that's all right. I still learned a lot. And the fact that they're bringing back the Scouts to the Pentagon is a great thing. They need to quit the Scouting America garbage and start calling it the Boy Scouts of America. Did you know that there was a DEI merit badge? A DEI merit badge. I don't know if it was required or not because, some merit badges in scouting are required, camping, cooking, some of that kind of stuff. But they had a DEI merit badge. They're getting rid of that, and they're replacing it with a Department of War type of merit badge, a military service merit badge, where you learn about the services and the history of the United States military. Now, that's what we're talking about. And as we work through this woke DEI nonsense and getting rid of it from our country, we should never forget it. We should never forget it because it cost the lives of so many people, whether that be the COVID, whether that be the SSRIs, the transgenderism, the furry outbreak. And don't think it can't happen here in Mississippi. Blake talked about it at Northwest Rankin. And I've got a story. Where is it at? Where is it at? There was a lawmaker in California who just pled guilty for child pornography. Second time. He's had to resign twice and run for office twice and win. And now he's finally getting sentenced. Man, where did I put that? Well, can't find it. Doesn't matter. It's out there. It was in California. And it's just absolutely disgusting. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I even got it on audio.
Former state representative will be sentenced in February after pleading guilty to charges that include sexual exploitation of children. Stacey Lawton requested explicit photos of children from Lindsay Groves, who worked at a daycare in Tingsboro, Massachusetts. Groves pleaded guilty last month. Prosecutors say the two were dating at the time and exchanged thousands of text messages about those pictures. Lawton was elected to the New Hampshire House 3 times, but resigned twice because of separate legal problems.
And it wasn't California, it was New Hampshire. I apologize for that. Then you've got Congressman Tim Burchett. And we're going to listen to Congressman Tim Burchett as soon as we get back from the break. But I'm going to tell you what, he's making no bones about what to do with these people who are preying on our kids. And I have to say, I can't disagree with a word that he's saying. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back. Oh, yeah. Pedophiles, they're no good. Nope. We don't want any of that. We need to keep that in the forefront of everything that we're thinking about. Our kids are our national treasure. That's what's going to take this country forward long after we're all dust. It's our kids. What did we leave them with? Did we leave them with sound basis in mathematics, science, spirituality? Or did we just turn them into furries and SSRI dependent kids who need pharmaceuticals at every turn? You know, Tim Burchett, he's running for Senate in Tennessee. And I am not bashing any Mississippi congressman, but I do wish that they would they'd take this and kind of do something like this. Let's listen to Tim Burchett.
Hey everybody, Tim Burchett. I woke up this morning thinking about some stuff, and it sort of kind of makes me angry. You know, I hear people saying, "No, they're trafficking." Well, we got to get that straight. They're pimps, and when they say trafficking young kids for across state lines for sex with adults, no, they're not. They're selling these kids to get raped. I think we try to sanitize stuff. You know, in Hollywood, you know, shows the pimp and dressed in the fine clothes and the nice car and, you know, talking tough and all that. And that's all these people are. They're awful, awful, demonic people, and they deserve to burn in hell. And people say, "Oh, Burchett, you don't want to hang those people." The hell I don't. Bring them out to the farm. We'll take care of them. And I am not kidding you.
He's serious. He said, bring it out to his farm. They'll take care of it. I second that. I know a farm. If we got some of those in Mississippi, get the legalities figured out. We've got to take care of our kids. And what Hollywood has done to glamorize the sexualization of our kids is wrong. And I genuinely do disagree with the president on this, where he thinks all this stuff is just going to blow over. It's not. Is it going to cost an election? I pray it doesn't, but it could. I get it, this is just absolutely incredible to me. I get texts from people who I don't even know how they get my number, but there it is. And every day I not every day, every week I get one or two texts from people, usually on the text line, but sometimes on my personal line, of people just saying how much they love the show and how much they appreciate what we're doing here. And we've gotta take our wins, and we've gotta celebrate the wins, and I do wanna do that. I'm more of a Barry Sanders type of celebration. You all know Barry, right? Walter Payton will always be the greatest running back in the NFL, but Barry Sanders, um, even though he's a Detroit Lion, he has a special place in my heart. I just love the way he ran. He was truly like Tecmo Bowl. He was like Madden before Madden was ever thought in the video game console arena. He was just like a pinball. He would just bounce off everything, but he would score the touchdown, and all he would do is hand the ball to the ref and say, "Yep, go back and do it again." I want to enjoy the wins that we have through President Trump. I am not tired of winning. I want to win more, but there are also some issues that are more important than others. I'm not going to celebrate getting a river permit, a river water permit over protecting our kids. And it would just be nice if Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee had more of his fellow colleagues who are elected to Congress just coming out and say similar stuff. I realize that might be too spicy for some congressmen, but the communication that guy has had is absolutely incredible. It, in fact, kind of gave me an idea a little bit. We'll have to see if I'm up for it. But that was Congressman Tim Burchett. Any chance I get the chance to give him a rub on the air, I'm going to do it. The other big story that I want to talk about, close to my heart, is NASA. We all love NASA. So many of us grew up watching the space shuttle program, the highs, the lows, the joy, the tragedy, and what's happening with the new Artemis system. And I've got a saved clip here. I just want to pull it up here. This is coming from Jason Rance. He goes, "We've spent $64 billion on the SLS, a single-use rocket that costs $4.2 billion every time we launch it. That's ridiculous. China is building reusable rockets aiming for a permanent moon base. And right now, some people are saying they're ahead of us. After Artemis 3, retire SLS, shift the reusable systems, and win the space race." And I'd have to say that that would be a great idea, but there are a lot of government mouths that are going to lose their food if you do what you're saying there, Mr. Rance. And we just heard during the commercial break how they're reorganizing Artemis 3. I don't know how they're going to get 2 Artemis rockets ready to go in 2028. The supply line's just not there. I'd kind of know. I don't see that. Now, if we want to use SpaceX, and people are like, "Andrew, Starship hasn't even flown correctly yet." This is just my opinion, and I don't work at SpaceX. I know people who do, but I don't have any insider secret squirrel information from SpaceX, because if I did, I'd be in a lot of trouble, and my friends who work there would be fired, and I don't want anything to do with that, and they respect their jobs, and we're gonna keep it that way. But if this is just my opinion of watching SpaceX develop from nothing back in 2007 to where it is today. It is my opinion that within the first 2 launches of the new version of Starship, it's gonna work off perfectly. I bet they start catching Starships, not just the boosters, but also the ships after they orbit the Earth. You know, what a lot of people don't realize is we've seen a lot of spectacular breakups and failures. They were purposely leaving tiles off of the Starship. They were purposely stressing the Starship to failure. They wanted it to break. They wanted to see how much it could take, how much damage could it take, how much of a beating could it take. This is right in line with everything that not only SpaceX and Elon do, but any respectable space company does. NASA does it all the time. They over-engineer the crap out of everything. And then when they over-engineer the crap out of everything, they still don't take the NASA their own engineers' recommendations, much like Boeing Starliner. If you heard about that and the whole transmission with that last week, where the engineers said we shouldn't launch the Boeing Starliner, and they did anyway. Didn't we not learn anything from Challenger? Did we not learn anything from Columbia? That's the government for you. Warnings, notes, and cautions in the maintenance manual. Notes, just there. Cautions, you better follow this. Warnings, it's written in blood. I think there needs to be a warning in in NASA. If the engineer says something's not right, maybe we ought to take another look at this. And granted, nothing happened to them, thank God. But Miss Sunita, she had an extra 7.5 months on the space station that she wasn't expecting to have. That's insane to me. And here we are in 2026, still using space shuttle technology that was originally designed in the early 70s to late 70s. But it helps the military industrial complex with their solid rocket motor production. Those solid rocket motors are killer, by the way. And these engines, I believe the engines for Artemis 2 are space shuttle production engines. So we're not even producing new engines yet. Meanwhile, SpaceX is producing thousands and thousands of new rocket engines, hundreds yearly. They're learning the system. They're automating it, much like Ford did the automobile. Elon's doing the rocket ship. And the best thing about this is the taxpayers minimally funding everything that SpaceX is doing. There's contracts for SpaceX to launch military satellites and do all that, but we're not paying them to develop this. Meanwhile, we're paying Boeing billions, Lockheed Martin billions of dollars, ladies and gentlemen. And the thing about space exploration is God only gave us one Earth, but he gave us a whole lot of up there. We got to figure out how to monetize it. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back. Hey, real quick, I just appreciate everybody who's tuning into the live stream. Means a lot. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show. Man, the time flies. Founding Fathers Friday. Great segment. Glad I got to talk about Representative Burchett talking about all the things we need to do to protect our kids. Glad I got to talk about NASA. That's always great. This weekend's going to be an absolute banger of a weekend. The Sweet Bee, the Toots, and I, we're going to do a little bit of farm work tomorrow. I'll be sitting there operating the side-by-side, kind of taking it easy while we get the sheep moved. Then I'll be spending some time with my kids online, something we haven't done in a long time. We'll go play a couple games. And then I'm hoping to take the Sweet Bee out to one of our favorite places. It'll be pretty good. Fellas, let me ask you a question. And I'm being serious as a heart attack here. As I get the music all keyed up. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Can you honestly say this about your wife? The heart of her husband trusts her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. Is that what your wife does for you? Because that's what the Sweet Bee does for me. And it's almost like this circle that just keeps going around and around. And you know, we're not in our 20s or 30s or 40s anymore. We're getting on up there a little bit. So the things that we used to do when we were a lot younger are not the same things that we do today. And that's all right. Because we're building something together, right? And we've got our kids and our families and the farm, the sheep. We got the new dog, Eli. Eli's great, by the way, let me tell you. The farm, when Isaiah passed away, it was missing something, but Eli's bringing it back. Nothing against the other dogs, but Eli is pretty cool. So I just want to say, men, it's the weekend. We've got all sorts of time to go out and do stuff. Do something special. Do something that is completely going to catch her off guard. Dare I say, surprise her. Sweet Bee doesn't like surprises, but I still find a way to surprise her anyway. And you can too. Don't surprise the Sweet Bee. Surprise your own spouse. Yeah, I had a problem there. But ladies and gentlemen, if we just keep on going through life, doing the same old, talking about the same things, doing the same things, getting into the same rote and repetition, things get dull. Things go sour. Things get fetid. And you don't want that. And so that's why I take the last segment of the Friday show every week to tell you not just about how awesome my Sweet Bee is, but to remind all of you how special your spouses are, how special your wives are. And ladies, I'm talking to you. If your man's a good man, you need to let him know. Because sometimes this works both ways, you know. There are times where your man will be working, doing all the right things. And it happens to us too, but we just take each other for granted. And you never want that. It's how arguments start, misunderstandings happen. Next thing you know, a text goes through and it means something totally different than what you thought it did. And then there's all this bent up anger and animosity and you unable to forgive and correct. We gotta all agree that the path that we're on right now, where we're not celebrating traditional marriage, it's going to be taken away if we're not careful, and it's not going to be or remain special, and our kids aren't going to think it's special. Mom, Dad, why didn't you wait to get married? How long did it take you to get married? These are all things that your kids are doing and observing. And I know my Sweet Toots is listening to this. So this is for you too. You got plenty of time. There's a good guy out there. Tall, dark, and handsome. Perhaps a little curly hair on the top, facial hair. You'll be all right. No rush. Take your time. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a wonderful and blessed weekend. I really do hope that you make it to church on Sunday if that's what you do. And until next week, take care, everybody. Be blessed.